I know when some of you were kids, there were no such thing as Legos. Now, when I was a kid, all the Legos were square or rectangles. There were no circles, there were no flowers, there were no little hearts. We had to be creative. Honestly, I think that the world is trying to take creativity away from children today. Everything's on a screen, everything's right in front of them, everything's already built for them. And all they do is interact with it. Creativity seems to be a thing of the past. Well, that's sort of what we're talking about today, is the world's plan for you. Last week we talked about God's grand plan and how God desires us to be holy, even as He is holy. 1 Peter 1:15. Well, the world has a plan for you as well, and it starts in 1 John 2:15-17. It says, "Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of the Father lives forever." So right there, John is saying that the world desires for you to have the lusts of your flesh, the lusts of your eyes, and the pride of life. Well, we can move over to Galatians chapter 5, 19-21, where it just fleshes this out a little bit more. It says, "The acts of the flesh are obvious: immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, carousing, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God." So Paul sort of fleshes that out for us a little bit more directly and says these are the things that the lust of the eyes and the lust of the flesh and the pride of life look like every day. Immorality, impurity, sensuality, and down through the list. Now, back to last week's verse, 1 Peter 1:15, says, "So just as He who called you is holy, be holy in all you do." God's plan for us. But the world's plan is different. Okay? But we've got to recognize, and we've got to first understand, number one, that the world is broken. It's no longer following after God's plan. The world as a whole is no longer following after God. So the world is broken. Number two, that we are inclined or predisposed to sin. We as human beings here on earth. And number three, humans seek first, above all things, self-gratification. We want to meet our needs first. Now, there's some scriptures that we can look at that speak to each of these. Romans 5:12 speaks to the world is broken or fallen. If you want to follow along in your Bible, please do so. Romans 5:12, "Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, and in this way death came to all people because all sinned." The world broke when Adam and Eve decided to not do what God said. And it gets more broke every single day. Have you ever broken something and tried to fix it and just made a bigger mess out of it? You know, we try to fix the world continually. We try to play like it's not broken. We try to overlook the brokenness. We try to patch up the brokenness. When I was a kid, if you got a hole in your jeans, I know you buy jeans with holes in them now. I don't understand that. But when I was a kid and you got a hole in your jeans, Mom would get one of those jean repair kits, and she'd cut it to shape, and it would iron on over the hole. And it was so embarrassing to wear those patches on your jeans because it didn't match the fade of the jean, for one thing. Okay? So you had these nice faded jeans and then this dark blue patch on your knee. It just didn't work, Mom. You covered up the hole, but now it looks worse than when it had the hole. We try to fix things. Adam and Eve, I think, in so many ways tried to fix things and make things right by growing a family, but even in their family there was brokenness. For Cain killed Abel. And we can go through biblical history from the very beginning, and we can see the world continue to be broken apart. And all we need to do is turn on CNN or Fox News today, and we can see the brokenness all around us. The world is broken. Number 2, we're inclined to sin. You can turn to the book of James, chapter 4, verses 1 through 4. He says, "What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire, but you do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. And when you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. You adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? Therefore, anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God." We are inclined to sin. We want to find things for us. We want to get more than the next guy. If I have all the toys, not only do I have all the toys, but no one else can play. We are inclined to sin. And number 3, humans seek self-gratification. We can turn back to Galatians a little bit earlier than what we read previously, verses 16 and 17, where Paul says to the church, "So I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of your flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want." See, but the world says you can do whatever you want. Please do whatever you want. Now, they always put this little caveat in there, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. But honestly, the world doesn't care if you hurt somebody else. Do whatever you want. Gratify your desires. Be happy. See, God's word says, be holy. The world says, be happy. But can true happiness come from simply gratifying our desires? I say not. I've met so many people that had everything that they wanted and were totally miserable because they didn't have what mattered. They had all the world said that they should have, yet they were miserable. And they just felt, maybe if I just get a little bit more, maybe if I just get a couple more promotions, maybe if I just get a little bit more fame, maybe if I just have a little bit more money in my bank account, everything will be great. I'll be happy. Where it says be happy. But this stuff doesn't bring lasting happiness. It brings temporary gratification, but not lasting happiness. See, according to 1 John chapter 2, the world offers us the lust of our flesh, which is our physical desires. It says, go out and meet the needs of your physical desires. It offers us, according to 1 John, the lust of our eyes, which are our emotional pleasures. Go out and gratify your emotions. Find what makes you feel good. And the world offers us the pride of life, which are our intellectual pleasures. Learn, grow, move on, move up. You know more than the next guy. You're smarter than the next guy. Remember, those things come from the world, not from God. The world's offers are expressed, as we said in Galatians. It says the acts of the flesh are obvious. They are absolutely obvious. They're contrary to God. They're easy to see. They stand out like a sore thumb. We know when something's not right. We know when someone else is doing something wrong. We know when we're doing something wrong. It's not like, oh, I didn't realize sleeping with my neighbor's wife was wrong. If I'd have only known ahead of time. I didn't realize gossiping about a coworker would get them fired and I would get their job. Oh, I wish I'd have known. We do those things on purpose because they meet our needs, and sometimes meeting our needs means inflicting pain and sorrow on others. Sometimes it feels good to hurt somebody else. Well, that's the flesh. Immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, down through the list. Well, we don't do sorcery anymore. Come on, that's sort of silly. That's outdated. We don't worship idols anymore. That's old-fashioned. Nobody has fits of rage anymore. Oh, sadly, we do all those things still today. See, but we've got to recognize that this world and its brokenness is under someone's control. So we've got to ask ourselves, who's in charge down here anyway? I'm not in charge down here. Let's look at a couple more scriptures. We'll turn to Matthew chapter 4, verses 8 and 9. This is Jesus being tempted in the wilderness. And it says in verse 8 of chapter 4, Gospel of Matthew, again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor and said, I will give this to you if you simply bow down and worship me. The devil can't give away something that's not his. This realm, this world, this brokenness is his. He's the boss down here. John chapter 12, verses 31 and 32, Jesus is speaking about his coming death and resurrection. But he says, now is the time for judgment on this world. Now the prince of this world will be driven out. And when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men to myself. Now, the key part there for our discussion today is that the prince of this world is in charge down here. The same one who appeared to Jesus in the desert and said, if you worship me, I will make you Lord of all that is mine. So, if we agree that this broken world belongs to the devil, what does he want? Well, we can turn to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 22, verses 31 and 32. This was an eye-opener for me as I studied this verse, because I've read it one way for many, many years. And I don't know why, but it says, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift. What's the rest of that verse? Sift what? Well, I've always understood it, sift you, Peter. But the word says sift All of you. All of the disciples. I don't know why, but I've never caught that before. The devil wishes to sift all of you. He wishes injury and harm and pain and death upon all of you. But I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail, and when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. In other words, he's saying, the devil's going to win this round, Peter. He's going to get all of you. He's going to beat you up. He's going to tempt you. He's going to cause you to sin. He's going to cause you to deny me. Not just you, but all of you. Remember there in the garden when Jesus is arrested? Where are all the disciples? Where are they? I know they've got a circle around Jesus. Their arms are linked together. Say, you can't have them, right? No. They were gone. Now, they'd all just gotten a real good nap, so they were well rested, and they ran away. They ran away. They were tempted to flee. Oh my goodness, they might arrest me too if I hang around. Oh my goodness, they might kill me too if I try to defend Jesus. Simon, the devil wishes to sift you and all of your brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters, the devil wishes to sift you. That's his plan. That's what he wants in this world. He wants to cause you to sin. He wants to put enmity, division between you and God. He wants you to not want to talk to God. He wants you to not want to be in relationship with God. He wants you to not want to love God. And as things happen in our lives, more often than not, we blame God than we do the enemy in the broken world. All of us have brokenness in our life. All of us have pain and sorrow in our life. All of us have things in our life that we wish would have never happened or would not be happening to us right now. And we raise our fists to God and say, why, God, why? And we move farther away from God when we should be moving closer to Him. It is the brokenness of this world that causes the pain and suffering we experience in life. So what is the end result of the enemy's plans? And turn to the book of Ephesians, chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. It says, as for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sin, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the Spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. The end result of the devil's plan, the end result of the world's plan is death, destruction, and wrath. That's what he wants for each of us. So when we see something pleasing out in front of us, when we see something that we want to reach out and grab and have for ourselves, take a step back. Say, God, is this what you want for me? Don't just jump at it. Don't just grab it. Don't just embrace it. Step back and determine if that's really what God wants for you. Because I do believe that God offers us things here on earth as well, other than salvation. He offers us health and well-being and happiness, true happiness. He offers us hope in a future. But remember, the devil is the master of illusion. He's a counterfeiter. He can turn something bad and make it look good. And he can hold it out to you and say, well, this is a gift from God. That's exactly what happened in the garden. God won't be mad at you if you eat that apple. Matter of fact, he's worried that if you eat it, you'll be just like him. What's wrong with that? He turned something forbidden into something desired. But it was a lie. It was a counterfeit. They didn't become like God. They became sin. The world is fallen. It is broken. We ourselves are inclined to sin. The desire of the enemy is to see us fail. But God's plan, God's purpose, and God's future for us is filled with hope and joy and peace. Be holy, for I am holy. That's God's desire for us. Next week we'll talk about how the world's plan and God's plan are different. It seems obvious, but we'll break it down a little bit as we continue to move forward, and we'll stay in Galatians again for next week. But what I encourage you this week to consider, okay? Consider that not all things you see and perceive as good are good. Step back. Ask God. And if that little voice inside, if your spirit says, John, step away from that. I know it looks good. I know it's what you think you want. I know it's what you think you need. And I know you think it's from me, but it's not. Let it go. And trust that God will bring something better to you in the morrow. That first deception comes to us when the devil says, don't accept Jesus. Don't choose to live for Jesus. Don't be a God follower. Don't rededicate your life. Don't join the church. That church is just filled with horrible liars, cheats, bad-mouthers. Sure is. That's us. But hopefully if we can all get on God's page instead of the world's page, this group of horrible, cheating, lying sinners can make a difference in the world. We continue to fail. We continue to be tempted. We continue at times even in our brokenness. But God says trust Him. So the invitation is simply to trust Him this morning. And if God's laid something on your heart this morning that He's calling you to do, be faithful.